Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for two Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Gotta let it go. So fast to finger down. Stars tonight together. He'll have me on the stage. 니가 먼저 봐. 커피 farmer with the joy.
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for September 10th, 2024. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on all podcast catchers and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at Open the Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the little red box that says sponsor this podcast, and you set up a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joining alongside, as always, your other host, Case Lowing. Case, what are you up to next Monday?
Next Monday, I am preparing for what is probably my second busiest work week of the year. Mentally preparing, physically preparing. I feel like now I'm forgetting something. What should I be preparing for next Monday?
Next Monday is the Japanese national holiday, Respect for the Aged Day.
Respect for the Age Day. I famously do not respect my elders. I do not think I will be
That's
participating.
why you're not. That's why you're not participating in it. But if anyone's wondering why there are a lot of shows coming up next week, that's why it's a national holiday. But that's why Gate of Origin is on that day this year.
It's all Japan does holidays right. They have fun holidays. They've got Golden Week, they've got Kids Day, they've got Respect for Your Elders Day. America doesn't. We don't do it right.
They have Culture Day. And you know what's always around Culture Day?
What's that?
Gate of Destiny.
Oh, well, that's
The
culture.
most cultured Dragongate show of the year, I feel like.
The problem is that, what are you going to do? Celebrate American culture? I don't think anybody wants to do that.
I mean, we, as a society, already choose to do that every Sunday. Right now.
Speaking of American culture, I've got two topics for you don't know about. Neither are wrestling related. Can I hit you with them quickly?
Hell yeah, let's go.
As of 5 minutes before we started recording, I have gone to my local Walgreens, the pharmacy here, and I have picked out the new-ish Coca-Cola flavored Oreos. Mike, are you familiar with these?
Oh, I love a Chikara Oreo.
Yeah. I personally, here's the thing. I'm not a big Oreo guy, actually. It's
Regular Oreos don't have any interest in. The Chikara ones, yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. They're not bad, but I like a chewy Chips Ahoy, and then a regular Chips Ahoy, and then an Oreo. It's at the bottom of my power rankings, but I've had a lot of people ask me in my personal life if I've had these yet. I went out to the store, I got them. I will say a strong 3.5, 3 3/4. I'm in a really good mood today. Maybe 3 3/4 out of 5. It is exactly what it should be. It stays in its lane. It's not overbearing. It's not too strong of a flavor. When you taste it, you go, "Yep, Coca-Cola Oreo. This makes sense." And there is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when you started talking about Coca-Cola Oreo, I immediately went to my great aunt used to do a Coca-Cola cake. And that like somehow Coca-Cola with chocolate works very, very well. I mean, that's why for a long time, if you wanted a treat at Wendy's, you got yourself a Frosty and you ate about a quarter of it and then you poured a bunch of Coke in there, right? Like that's a flavor combination. That's a win there. I mean, 3.5, I would say on that. That seems like it's as you said, stayed in its lane. But like I've had some like, and in Texas now there's Dr. Pepper cake, which is a big deal, which let me tell you, Dr. Pepper cake, you can go get it at the HEB. It's worth it.
That's interesting. I have someone in my life who at one point, and I should note this is a woman who's around the same age as me, made me, because she knows I'm a Mountain Dew fan, she made me a Mountain Dew cake and then didn't sleep with me, which is a whole other story, which you would think the Mountain Dew cake would be a way to initiate that, but made me a Mountain Dew cake, and it was really, really tasty. So I would hope that the soda-flavored cakes that you're referring to can make their way north, can make their way east, and that somebody in Chicago like myself can start to enjoy these on a more regular basis.
Hey, buddy, you make it to Y'all Out, and I'll make sure that there's going to be a Dr. Pepper cake with your name on it.
I really should try, shouldn't I?
It's going to, at the very least, it'll be an interesting like show and a time, and you get to go see the most insane thing in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is attached to the ballpark, the Globe Life Field, the giant Costco, the CBD Kratom back porch stage.
And what is that?
One of the local CBD Kratom companies bought the license to, or bought the naming rights for like the outdoor like entertainment district that's right next to the new ballpark.
That's crazy. Do you guys, is marijuana legal in the state of Texas?
Oh, hell no.
Okay, that's
not.
what I thought.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Well, we can't even get like sports betting figured out, man.
You would think if anything, Texas could figure that out.
It is a thing that might be a like side Spears Evasions thing to talk about the weirdness of the Texas gambling industry and what's happening right now, because I'm like inundated, because that's the whole deal about why Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks to the Adelsons, was that he wants in on the casinos that are coming in eventually one day. And like that's where everything is. Like as soon as we get like casinos and gambling, maybe down the line weed, but man, I don't know. Like, and it's like a wild thing also, because the attorney general, who I feel like if you know a state's attorney general, then something's fucked, right?
Yeah, that's a very good policy.
Just in general, like let me tell you, the 2020 primary case did a number on my mentality towards politics. But the thing is that Ken Paxton is like so out there, like he's trying to like ban CBD, which is just one of those things that I'm like, good luck, man. Like you could walk into a 7-Eleven and get like a CBD vape and a bottle of Fireball. It's not like full strength Fireball, but like that's where Texas priorities are. Or you can go get like 50 cans of Zen.
I mean this in the most reaffirming way possible, but even white trash loves CBD. That would be very, very tough to get rid of.
Right, yeah, and there's like a whole bunch of like military or like vet run ones too, so it's like popular with the troops in Texas too. So that it's a real tough thing, but yeah, Texas is wild. You get to Y'all Out, I'll make sure you have. Do you like nuts in your cake or not?
Not typically.
All right, that's the right answer. Yeah,
I'm not an almond guy. I know that's probably not exactly what you're referring to, but almonds suck.
You know, like
I'm not a big walnut guy either.
Not super into those. Pecans though, like that's what I was asking, because usually Dr. Pepper cake has
that. I don't mind a pecan on ice cream, but in a cake, I don't think I want that.
Yeah, no, or like a pecan pie. Like
that's flavor country. Deal. Not my go-to, but I could deal. Second topic. Glad you brought up Texas sports, because this is my second topic. And when people in my life hear that I do like a wrestling podcast, they get excited, and then I have to explain to them. I go, well, it's like a niche of a niche of a niche. It's, we have a delightful amount of listeners. We've cultivated this really nice small community, but ultimately we're talking about something that is focused on an incredibly small group of people. I have a comment about Texas sports for you. I would argue it's inappropriate to even do this on the recording because it is such a niche Texas sports thing, but I haven't talked to you all day, and I would like to bring this up ever so quickly before we talk about maybe the best Dragongate show of the year.
Okay, I'm trying to think niche Texas sports. Is this about Kumar Rocker getting called up?
Yep. Oh, my man. Thank you to JoJo Remy, friend of the show, for alerting us that Kumar Rocker, the former college baseball standout pitcher who has been through hell and back in his major league journey, is going to pitch for the Texas Rangers on Thursday. This is like Oh God, what's a Dragongate comp for it? It's
when Tien
I
Revolution
got
showed
it.
up?
I
Yeah.
got it. It's Shoya Sato debuting.
Okay. Yeah. No, but if Shoya Sato still was able to spin it after two UCLs.
Yes, yeah. No, this is a guy who's been hurt, didn't pitch well in the minors for a long time, has rehabbed, has come back. It's a nice story just that he got here. Hopefully he crushes it. I will be tuned into the maybe the Texas Rangers radio broadcast because I can't get the Rangers from where I'm at. I know you can't get them from where you're at, but I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, get yourself some Eric Nadel. Great man. Eric
Okay,
Nadel.
good.
Yes.
I'm into it. I wanted to bring that up real quick. That if you're somebody like me whose baseball team is out of contention at this point, the White Sox more so than any other team in history, if you need something to get excited about, other than watching the Baltimore Orioles on national televised games as they just continue to pound the baseball, Kumar Rocker pitching for the Rangers on Thursday, I think is super, super exciting.
You have that, or you want to see if the White Sox are going to break 110.
God, we hope so. It would be so.
They've already broke 110. I mean, is one? I'm looking at the math. 120. Yeah. If they could break 120, beat that Tigers record, right?
Mets, 1962 Mets.
Okay.
That's the record we've been going with here. The problem, and it doesn't mean a ton because it is the 2024 White Sox, but the problem is that they have two series against the Angels left. They've got one in Anaheim and one in Chicago, and I think the A's will take care of business. They've got the A's. I think their final 5 series, it's once they're done with the Guardians, it's Angels, A's, Angels, Padres, and then they end with the Tigers. And the Tigers will probably still be in the hunt. I think they'll kill the White Sox. Padres, same deal. They need some wins. So I think the A's are a much better baseball team. It's just that, if there was
Angels
one
are
team,
so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If there was one team that was going to screw up history, it would be the Anaheim Angels, and I'm afraid that could happen.
And especially the 2024 Anaheim Angels, as Ron Washington, who I have all the love in the world for. It seemes like the game's passed them by.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's
heartbreaking.
It's a bummer. It's an absolute bummer.
One of my favorite people, like I mean, the Rangers. I mean, outside of course, like Bruce Bochy now, like Ron Washington captured the hearts of the fan base in a certain way that we all were kind of polling for him to get that next job after what happened. And if you're a team that's based around one player and that player goes down for the year, you're kind of effed, right?
Yes. I mean, that was, they weren't good with him. So imagine what they're like without Mike Trout.
Yeah. Well, when your star now is Anthony Rodon, who hates baseball.
He hates it so much.
Yeah. You're just all kinds of fucked there in that case. But yeah, it's a situation, at least with the White Sox, where like you uniquely have about out of the remaining 145 have been played, 17 games left. You have 9 games up against the number 2 and number 3 worst teams in your league when you're the number 1 by far. It's going to be tough to get up to 120, but if any team now can make it, it's this team, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, the A's are much better. I don't think they'll struggle against the White Sox. They're the most interesting team I've ever watched. I've watched about 120 White Sox games this year, probably. Really everything but their West Coast weekday games that, I'm in bed by the time those games start. But, for our European listeners, and I know there's plenty of, the 2024 White Sox are the worst baseball team ever. They have broken records for poor performance that were set before cars were invented. I mean, some of the statistics that people are pulling as to just how bad they are, you can't believe it. Years are starting with 1890, and records that were never meant to be broken are being broken, and they're doing it in just the most entertaining way possible. They always find new ways to lose. I love it. I love my squad. Thank you, Jerry Reinsdorf, for making an entire city utterly miserable. And he'll do the same thing with the Chicago Bulls this year, so it'll be great.
Gosh, all I really have around here is like, oh, Jerry's going to definitely hire Deion Sanders next year. Like, that's the weirdness I'm dealing with.
God, that sucks.
It's going to happen because Mike McCarthy's on an expiring contract, and you don't leave your coach with an expiring contract unless you have someone you're going to bring in unless he gets the Super Bowl, right?
I guess. I don't know. Not to turn this into open the sports gate real quick, but I don't follow a ton of college football. I've watched more college football this year just because of the video game and I'm kind of into it, but I hated this Colorado thing from minute one. It all annoyed me. I thought they were going to suck last year. They had, false hope at the start of the season, and then they sucked. And, this year, I mean, they got their ass kicked by Nebraska on Saturday, which was great to see. I don't think I could handle Dion on the Cowboys as their coach, because I think it would finally just completely melt the collective sports media brain.
Oh,
I
God.
don't think I could handle that.
Yeah, because like you get the sports media that plays into the fact that the Cowboys are the biggest fan base, and at the very least, if it's not the biggest fan base you're playing into the people who hate the Dallas Cowboys, so they want to see them fail. Add in Deion Sanders to that mix, and I don't know how like Nick Wright would like not explode. Like a lot of people would just like who are a lot smarter than they should be will just be losing it because they can't stand the Cowboys or like can't stand the discourse around it. It's like, congrats, you've got the most self-aggrandizing coach possible who's only really coached at Colorado to benefit him and his sons. Like it's like to that extent, like Case, do you know how much money they have to do to get rid of the guy?
Oh, it'll be a disgusting number.
It is $20 million essentially to get rid of the guy. It's but it's like $10 million if he wants to leave. So everyone thinks that he's going to leave after. They think it's after Shador graduates. I think it is because the buyout drops a lot. Will be after next year.
Is Shador a senior this year?
If he's not a senior, everyone thinks that he's going to go out to the draft.
Okay, all right, that's okay. That answers that. All right, I think we're caught up on American sports. I think we've covered every angle of this. We talked American snack food. We have a ton of Japanese wrestling to talk about, Mike. Let's start with Glate, which is what a cursed sentence that was. Jesus.
Case, I feel like whenever we start with Glate, it is always because we're just kind of going like, this happened. And in the newest edition of, this happened, announced this morning, making his return to wrestle in a Japanese company for the first time in 9 years. One of Shima's most famed students / tag team partners, Ricochet, will be appearing at the October 6th Glate Ver Mega show that's happening at Edion Arena, Osaka. For those who get confused about which ones we're talking about, that's the big room. That's the big room. It's notable that both Ricochet and Shima have said that this is likely going to be the last Spike Mohicans reunion. That's the name of their historic tag team 2010 through 2012. And if you look at how Shima's been holding up lately, there's a lot to that, I feel like.
It does seem like we're getting within the ballpark of a Shima retirement. That's certainly one aspect of this. I will just issue a brief correction on your behalf, which is it's been 7 years since Ricochet has been in Japan for a Japanese company, not
2017.
9.
Yeah, my math. Yeah, it was 2017.
No, you're all good. I had to look because I was like, well, I thought he did Dragongate in 2017, and he did. His last match in Japan was Shima and Ricochet against KZ and Yamato in November of 2017. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know. It makes sense. It's so not as exciting as Ricochet doing a Dragongate pop-in. I really, really wish that was the case, whether it would have been at World or at, obviously Gate of Destiny, if he was going to be available all around that time. I don't know. This whole, that Glate show in Osaka has such early 2000s 01 vibes where they are flying in so many wrestlers. The match lineup feels largely disconnected from the promotion as it's been boots on the ground in Japan. And honestly, we talked when we did the Toryumon X show, we talked about the original incarnation of Wrestle 1. It kind of feels like if Shima put together a Wrestle 1 type spectacular.
Yeah, and it's at a point now where you look at, one would think that AAA is helping cover the AAA flights there. That's such an expensive show that like is so much of that era, like you just like look about like, okay, Ricochet's coming in for this thing. You're getting Parker Boudreaux versus Hayato Tamura. You're paying that plane flight. And you just like look at this and with even the card that's announced, and I feel like that they've announced a pretty good amount of it at this point. Oh, and you just like look at it and you're like, okay, with all these pieces, how are you making this into a functional promotion? And like it's now so far beyond that point that it's like, yeah, no, Shima, go wrestle your your favorite pupil, go team with them perhaps one last time and get that indulgence, because that's what it kind of feels like to me. Because like the other side of it is, Case, as much as we both like that, we would love Ricochet back there, it just would not work money wise. Like, so it's just like it was destined to be this to me in my mind. And in that way, it's a bummer, because I'd much rather, as you were saying, like a lot more interesting stuff are happening in Dragon Gate by leaps and bounds. But it's just like this is kind of fated to be. And it just it is one of those things that it kind of makes you reflect back. And we didn't have this on the run sheet, but like it reflects back about how someone like Pac came back, did everything, and then left and did everything like the family way. And you have Ricochet, you know, kind of, this is like the spurs of the split still kind of playing out in a way. I mean, the guy has the dragon tattooed on him, but he's not returning into a Dragon Gate ring.
Well, this was one of our great unanswered questions for a number of years is, you know, if Ricochet were to leave, which he did, which side would he fall under? And, you know, Ricochet has chosen the CIMA side, and I'm sure whatever they do, and I want to talk about possible match types, will be exciting, but it's hard to... I don't know. This whole show is just weird, and I don't want to be the financial police, because Lord knows, like, when people play safety police, it bothers me, but you're flying in Ricochet, Parker Boudreaux, El Hijo del Vikingo, Octagon Jr., Zach Wentz, Trey Miguel, Fabi Apache, and El Hijo del Vikingo. Did I say that? Sam Adonis is the other one that I don't think I said.
And there's an Italian tag team coming in too.
Oh, sure. Okay. And then you've got Nakajima and Matsukatsu Funaki, who neither of whom can come cheap. And it's just...
Or draw.
I don't know what they're going to do. It's one of those things where, you know, I personally am a little, not, maybe bother's not the right word. I think people are far too hard on the overall legacy of CIMA at this point. I think he's taken too many beatings over the last few years. I think, you know, as we approach Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame season, the way people have started to dismiss CIMA, whereas in 2019, 2020, 2021, maybe they wouldn't vote for him, but they would at least think about him. And now, you know, they write him off as no shot. I think that's utterly ridiculous. I still think we're talking about one of the single most influential wrestling figures of the last 25 years, somebody who was a proven draw for 20 years, somebody who had world-class matches for 20 years and proved this year that they can still go in the ring when they have to. But man, this show just has horrendous vibes. And you made the joke, but, you know, it's truthful, of, you know, Nakajima and Funaki are not draws. Hayata Tamura hasn't been a draw. I mean, would Ricochet get me in the building if I lived in the Osaka area? Probably. But as we talk about all the time, the Dragon Gate fan base has such extreme turnover. And the last time Ricochet was there was 2017. Mike, the last show that he wrestled on, we're going to go into cage match early here because I want to read this card. Opening match. This is November 8th, 2017, Korakuen Hall. Don Fuji, Problem Dragon, and Mysterioso Jr. defeat Kotoka, Shun Skywalker, and Yuti. Gamma and Kness defeat Big R, Shimizu, and Kagatora. Ryo Saito defeats Yasushi Kanda by DQ. Yoshino, Doi, and Genki defeat BB Hulk, Yosuke Santamaria, and Jason Lee. Shima and Ricochet defeat KZ and Yamato. And El Lindemann, Shingo Takagi, T-Hawk, Takashi Yoshida, and Yasushi Kanda defeat Dragon Kid, Eita, Masaki Mochizuki, Ryo Saito, and Susumu Yokosuka in your main event. That was a lifetime ago, Mike Spears.
Yeah, it's like so far ago that I'm like thinking of some of those like matchups and the teams. I'm like, all right, what stable was that?
Well, I think that's the show where Eita turned heel.
I have to look that up.
I'm pretty sure this is because it would have been a month after Overgeneration disbanded. And they did like Eita and the Legends. And I'm pretty sure this is where Eita turns on Dragon Kid.
That would make sense. Yeah. Just ephemerally, that makes sense to me.
We're going to talk big picture here about how healthy I think Dragon Gate is right now. And it's just amazing. You go back to 2017 at a time where you've got Shima and Shingo and Yoshino on this card. And God, is Dragon Gate so much better right now in 2024 than it was in 2017. And that's probably going to be said a number of times on this show. That might be a reoccurring theme. But I reviewed this show. This was not a good show. And boy, are we in a better spot right now with Dragon Gate in 2024.
Yeah. Absolutely, and especially coming off of what we'll be talking about for the bulk of today's show, unless you had any other great thoughts, Case.
I do actually, real quick. I want to talk about possible matchups because I
Oh,
thought.
I have one in mind. Yeah.
Okay,
go ahead.
I want to hear yours.
I think because you already have Trey Miguel and Zach Wentz going for the G Infinity, so Ishida and Izuchi are lined up. Unless they're going to keep SB and Taku wrestling luchadors, which could happen with how the card's constructed. I think SB Taku is the match.
I think that is such a poor decision for Glate to do that, and I think that's probably what they are going to do because it is this promotion
just their
after all.
mindset with that because the AAA guys are going to beat the crap out of Soma Watanabe. That's what they're there for.
And that's to me there's 3.5 possibilities. They could do Soma and Yamamura against Shima and Ricochet, and I guess Ricochet pins Soma, and that does nobody any favors. They could do Shima and Ricochet against SB and Taku, which 2 years ago would have sounded like the greatest thing in the world. I say this earnestly. I would worry in 2024 about Takuma Fujiwara being able to hang with Ricochet, even if it's just the version of Ricochet we saw against Kyle Fletcher, which was very good, but not great, not anywhere near peak Ricochet. I would really worry if Fujiwara is currently on the level to be in a match like that. And the problem is that SB's not pinning Shima, Taku's not pinning Shima, and neither of them are pinning Ricochet. So now you'd be in a spot where Ricochet beats one of those two guys, and then Ricochet never comes back, and those two guys are on the next show.
But I think with these pairings, you have to pick the team that's going to come out, and they're going to do the handshake afterwards. And maybe that is Soma and Takahiro Yamamura, because Yamamura can beat Shima. They can do that finish, and it'll be fine. It'll just be hey, you did this 6 years ago, right? And we saw that played out there before, or actually that was 7 years ago. That was that 2017?
That was King of Gate 2017 when Yamamura just squashed Shima in 5 minutes. That was crazy.
Ever since the 2017 Ricochet thing, and now all my concept of dates are off right now. But that's the thing with that kind of matchup is your one out, as you laid out, would be the fact that Takahiro could pin Shima, and that would be completely justified and fine.
I think the best match they could do, and I would worry maybe that there are political implications that would not allow them to do this. The best thing you could do, the thing that would excite me to a point where I wouldn't even be excited for Glate standards, I would just simply be excited, is Shima and Ricochet against Vikingo and Octagon. I think that is the best thing you could do. Vikingo and Ricochet together would feel like a monumental deal. I would really like to see that, and you can beat Octagon.
Yeah, no, I feel like you could do that, but I think the political implications. Conan would probably have a shit fit. Probably.
Oh, I don't know if he cares about that. As long as Vikingo is not getting pinned, I would worry about the AEW CMLL aspect of it more so than that.
He will try to make some point about AEW in that match. Don't put it past this guy.
That's entirely fair. Now, I said 3.5 because I talked about Yamamura, I talked about SBK and Taku, I talked about what I want, which is the Shima and Ricochet versus AAA match. There is, I don't know what, you tell me if my percentage is off base. Because it's Glate, and because it's this show, and this show just reeks of weirdness, there's a 25% chance that Ricochet and Sam Adonis end up in the same match?
Yeah, I could see that because Adonis will take falls. Yeah, I can't discount that.
It just we're talking about the possibility of Ricochet and Vikingo, and it could very easily be Sam Adonis and Hartley Jackson or Kotaro Suzuki. You know what I mean?
We both were on the same synapse there.
If it's Sam Adonis and Minoru Tanaka, I'm sorry. If it's Sam Adonis and Siki Yoshioka, look, I apologize. It sucks, but it's just, I know, according to Sean Ross Sapp, Sam Adonis has been doing great work in AAA lately, but it's a possibility we should all, at the very least, be aware of.
Yeah, no, I can't discount that. Yeah, God.
He can base for Ricochet. He will take a pinfall and then tweet about how proud he was to take the pinfall. it's not impossible.
No, you're absolutely not wrong about that. Yeah.
Sam Adonis and Junji versus Shima and Ricochet in Osaka #1. Get into it.
Yeah. No, that's 2003 as hell, man. What are you doing?
This show is so weird. The fact that Spike Mohicans are reuniting on the same show that has a Nakajima versus Funaki match is a really weird anecdote in the history of pro wrestling.
Yeah. And Vegeta's going to show up there.
Maybe they do that. Maybe they do Kendo Kashin and Fujita against Spike Mohicans.
You mean the Mark Henry of the Japanese wrestling industry? Kendo Kashin.
Mark Henry. Tough few days on Twitter, huh?
Yeah. Sometimes I was taught at a young age, sometimes it costs you nothing to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was reading the PWO greatest wrestler ever thread on Kendo Kashin a few days ago because I've just been going through that list. I just wanted to read something, and I flipped over to that forum, and man, people will tie themselves in knots trying to put over Kendo Kashin. It's really incredible.
Yeah. It's a good acid test about someone about opinions I want to discount is what they say about him.
Yeah, he's bad. It's okay that he's bad.
He's always been bad.
He ruins shows, but it is what it is. We don't have to pretend he's good. It's okay.
Yeah. He it's an annoying presence, like seasonal allergies.
That's exactly what he's like.
Well, unlike season allergies, let's talk about something we both were really into, and that was Stormgate 2024 from Korakuen Hall last Thursday. It is live. The VOD is on the Dragongate network into perpetuity, and I'll give my overall thought first. I can't remember the last time I had as much fun in a Korakuen Hall Dragongate show that did not have a Doi Darts match.
This was like the perfect combination of what if Dragongate was American television wrestling. It felt like an awesome episode of TV, but with the Dragongate polish and intrigue and heart and soul. But it really felt for match 1 through the main event like you were watching one singular episode of something.
Right. And that was always one of the things about the old Dragongate Infinity that just talking with people about like, oh, what's going to happen with this AEW Shockwave thing and what's like ideal wrestling. And it's like, for me, the old Infinities that were like 2 hours long were like some of my favorite things. And this was like chasing that feeling so hard throughout it. I mean, you look at just like when we were previewing the card a couple of weeks ago, Case, there were things basically up and down the card, like even to the extent of, oh, wow, Ultimo has to team with Big Hug against Paradox. That's something. And everything I would say, at the very least, for what they were trying to accomplish throughout the show. And it was not all just wrestling-based stuff. I mean, the big debut of Homare Kato and then the shocking turn that happened after that match, that's just classic good wrestling storytelling. And I think that more so than most Dragon Gate shows, which we always say, Jay Ho-Ho do an incredible job on the Tokyo and big shows. Jay and Ho-Ho putting over that angle in the way that Jay kind of, in a way, fanged the disappointment, like just like how preposterous it all was, and kind of putting the 2 and 2 together, going like, no wonder this kid was so closed off to me. He was Shun Skywalker was his idol. He was planning on doing this all along, and just like that kind of thing. I'm like, no, that's like perfect episodic wrestling. I mean, to an extent that everyone has come away with this show just ranting or raving. How much do you like remember Jay on like Dragon Gate commentary, not coming on the show, not doing other podcasts, but on a Dragon Gate thing saying, oh, go on Reddit, go on Twitter, and whenever someone asks what's the next the way to get in Dragon Gate, point to this show. Like, I don't remember that happening, and I think everyone just kind of walks away from this overall show just going like, damn, this was it. If not, I don't know if this show is the answer to those who have fallen off and for those who wish for a company that is not realistic anymore. But I mean, if we're talking about wrestling in 2024, and there's a lot of great stuff happening around the Dragon system, both inside it and for people who are from it, there's nothing I've liked as much over the last week as this show. It's just incredible.
I certainly did my rounds. I sent Dave a long email, and it's always funny emailing Dave because I always start off with, I know there's a lot going on, but, And as we have AEW TV deals looming, this is the definition of, I know there's a lot going on, but you should really make time to watch this Dragongate show. And I told Dave, watch the D-Courage match versus Vibes, watch Kato, watch the Gold Class and Z-Brats match, then watch the main event. And I clued him in on here's the things that he should watch for. And Dave's response is always, I look, this sounds awesome. I'm going to try to make time for it. I enjoy the promotion when I watch it. And I think that's been one of our real interesting discoveries this year, doing some of the throwback shows we've done, is like, when Dave follows Dragongate, he gets really into it. It's a shame that historically he always hasn't been able to keep up with it. I sent Rich and Joe a note about it, and we'll see if it gets covered. Rich, sent me a note back saying that, he'll try to watch it. And Mr. Don't Dig Your Heels In, I think, has unfortunately dug his heels in and made up his mind about Dragongate. So I doubt we'll get any positive coverage from the flagship on this. But to me, my big takeaway was this is the best show to happen in Korakuen Hall this year. It's better than the Despy Invitational, a show that, in fairness, I shit on before I watched it because I found the idea to be a little tiresome, and then it got great reviews. Then I watched it, and I didn't like it as much as everybody else, but I thought it was a good show. It's better than any of the N1 shows. I think All Japan has had a killer year in Korakuen. You can see that in their houses. You can see that in the quality of matches they've had. I think top to bottom, this show was better than anything I've seen All Japan do. I still think the floor for Dragongate is just much higher than the floor for current day All Japan. When All Japan misses, I think it's pretty painful to watch. Their high-end stuff is obviously great, but I thought this was better than that. The Fantasticomania shows this year I thought were very good. I thought this show was better than any of those. There were some good G1 matches in Korakuen. I don't think there was a great G1 show in Korakuen. I don't remember any Super Junior show really having any sort of thunder this year, especially the ones in Korakuen. So this is the best. The only other competition is if you go to Cage Match, there's a lot of Tokyo Joshi Pro and a lot of Stardom.
Yeah.
Not for me. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I would enjoy this Dragongate show more than I would a Tokyo Joshi Pro show.
The one, and I know Joshi heads are going to have my head for it, the one show that, in a way, had a kind of similar vibe at, like, this is different to me was the Marigold debut show. Like,
oh, that's a good poll. Okay, that's fair. I did not watch that, but I can see at least that being in the mentioning.
Yeah, because you had a star being made in Bozilla. You had, like, just the presentation-wise was completely different than how everyone else was. I mean, Rossi got 3 fucking fog machines to go off in Korakuen Hall, which, hey...
It's like when Gabe got lasers for WrestleMania weekend that one year.
Yeah, and it was just the WWN logo. That was it. But, like, it's really, when if you're someone who's not digging your heels in, and you examine, in case we do this now all the time, it's something that I hope we keep up doing into 2025 and onwards, is as we reassess and go back and review old Dragon System stuff. This show had a lot of beats that reminded me of the Japanese landing in 1999. There are, like, certain things there's like, wow, this is like a complete show from top to bottom. You had stuff happening, someone going for their first win, new challenges coming up. Then you have like an insane 6-man tag, a kind of jokey comedy match that was fun, but then you had a incredible debut and angle coming thereafter, and that's not even mentioning what happened after post intermission case. And to me, you compare that back to how King of Dragon was, especially around the main event, and how it felt like it was its own special thing. There were some notes here that they were playing a similar song than they did 25 years ago.
I think that's an interesting comp. It's not one I had thought about, but it's not one I disagree with. The thing that is going to be so memorable about this show, and that I think, when we're talking Dragongate in 2028 and 2029 and beyond, I think we're going to be able to remember Stormgate from this year, the September 2024 show, because from Mochi versus Kato on, that match, the angle that followed, out of intermission, into Z-Brats versus Gold Class with the Gianni Valletta return, into that Dreamgate main event, it was 90 minutes of pure chaos. It was really like nothing that I think Dragongate has ever done anything this chaotic before. It was just one thing after another, and the beautiful thing about watching this show from start to finish, or at least from match 5 to finish, is if you watch YAMATO versus ISHIN on its own, it might not strike you as like, oh, ISHIN could win this match. Oh my God, he might be the Dreamgate champion. But when you watch Kato turn, and then you watch Valletta come back, you watch Yamato versus ISHIN, and you go, well, shit, they might put the belt on ISHIN. Like, I don't know what they're thinking. This show it felt like it was booked on cocaine in the best way possible. It was just nuts every single step along the way. It was really such a great show. I have 2 matches at 4 stars. I have a 5-star angle. I have a 4.5-star angle if we were going to star rate those with the Valletta return, because I thought that was absolutely pure gold. I mean, we'll talk about that here momentarily. But yeah, top to bottom, I mean, it's the best Korakuen show I've seen this year. It's the best Dragongate Korakuen show since probably the first Ray Day Pareja show last year. I think that's the one that I ended up enjoying the most.
That's fair. Yeah.
I love that July King of Gate show, but that's because the King of Gate Korakuen shows are always my favorite. But one of those two, a tournament based on match quality, and I thought this show smoked those. This was the most memorable show I've seen this year. It was really, really awesome from start to finish.
So you touch on something that I kind of want us to like hone in on a second. The idea of the last 3 matches in that 90 minutes. You had, if you just took like this, and you made this the Infinity episode back in the day, you would have like basically by the time you're watching the Yamato versus ISHIN match, and even if you're watching it complete, as soon as you see Z-Brats hit the ring the first time, you're like, oh God, this might happen. And you have ISHIN with his hometown fans. I really like the Black Bear t-shirts that he has now, the ones that were out there with it. But like you had that, and then you had like the satisfying payoff of, okay, Paradox finally comes out for the save. The referees are able to like keep order, and it just like was such a satisfying finish with that with Yamato going turning bad, spitting in the face, and then doing that last Galeria. It was something that was like, hell yeah, that's my champion right there. He's the one that was able to put down all these guys who've been running wild for this entire show. And I think that if you look at it as like an episodic kind of thing, you're able to go from there into, all right, the stuff they built up here going into both Gate of Origin and Sendai next week, and then also the October 4th Korakuen. There's real show-to-show momentum in a way, like with storytelling, that Dragongate, when they're able to accomplish this, there's nothing else that reaches out to it. But we also kind of, in a way, have to reckon with the idea now that Z-Brats is 6 members strong. Yoshiki Kato, who knows about him? And now they are clearly the centerpiece of the promotion going to the back half of 2024.
It is what makes the history of Z-Brat so interesting, right? Because you're talking about a unit that at one time was defined by Shun Skywalker and SB Kento and Hyo. And at times we had that real slog, if you remember 2 summers ago, where it was just Shun and Kai and Hyo in all of these trios matches, and we were getting the YouTube upload, so we were seeing every one of them, and it was just like, Jesus Christ, they can't do anything else with these guys, or these trio matches aren't any good. And so it felt like their stock was at an all-time low. But I've always maintained, and it's ever so true coming out of this show, I think Z-Brats are fully within the conversation of one of the best heel units in Dragon System history. And depending on how they stick the landing with whatever is to come here, I think we're talking about like a legitimate upper echelon heel unit, because the top tier moments, when you think about like the turns, right? The Shun turn to get there, and the Jason turn, and the ISHIN turn, and the Kato turn. The way they formed this unit has been with these super memorable angles that have taken place over the course of a few years. You have the great matches, you have the memorable look, and we'll talk about the Kato stuff here. I want to start with the Dreamgate match, but the Kato stuff to me was 2.5 years of storytelling paying off in the most beautiful way possible.
It was just wild, and I think that now we look at what's to happen in October. They come out of that angle with a loser leaves unit match. We don't have the Z-Brat selection yet against Gold Class, and we are really staring down a crossroads for this unit, in that I think it's pretty clear who is the person who should go out of Z-Brats, right? Like, it's Kai. Kai's had a long heel tenure. He's right now the longest tenured heel, and by removing Kai, you lose the nominal leader of Z-Brats. Like as you said, like the unit has been about Shun and about the Bamashiri brothers, and then back to Shun. But Kai has been the listed leader at this, and it seems like we are finally at that crossroads of seeing what will Z-Brat's legacy be. Will it just end up being like, okay, Shun is just going to fully take over Z-Brats going forward coming out of this? Do they somehow manage to expel one more member of Gold Class, and Gold Class is going like, what do we do now with 3 men? Like that, it's really just satisfying stuff that they set up with everything around the match 5 in the semi-main event.
Yeah, no, I mean, just excellent stuff all the way around. So let's talk about ISHIN versus YAMATO, if that's okay with you. Let's start there.
Yeah, let's do it. So this was the second defense for YAMATO in his 6th Open the Dreamgate title reign. As I mentioned earlier, YAMATO retained after 2 Galereas, the second one coming after a whole just hootenanny, and YAMATO going under the ring, getting the eye black back out, turning bad, spitting wine in ISHIN's face, spiking him with a second Galerea to make his second defense of the title. And boy, I just feel like this entire match was just a ride with, I think, some of the best usage of Ryo Saito as a GM so far. I really loved how with Dragongate, and I feel like this is something we should say in case there are new Dragongate viewers who are listening to the show. Welcome. The refereeing in Dragongate, if you come into this match blind, you might wonder why it hasn't been an immediate DQ. Basically, the two things that get you DQ'd in Dragongate consistently are if the referee gets like consistently attacked or someone's unmasked. So GM Ryo Saito, after a referee gets attacked, said, hey, this is the Dreamgate. I can call this match off right now. All of Z-Brats needs to go backstage before I call out a new referee after Kachi-san, the first referee, took a bump. And I thought that was brilliant use of Ryo Saito.
I always look at it as Dragongate wants to put on, for the fans in the building, the best show possible. And so they are going to give their wrestlers as much leeway as they possibly can to make sure that fans don't go home disappointed. And you're right. That's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about the use of Saito in this match. Other than that, I simply liked the spot of him saying, you know, Z-Brats wanted a new ref, and Saito said, well, I'll get a new ref, but you guys have to go. And then they did. And then when Z-Brats came back out, they came out of the other tunnel, which was just a smart thing. Again, this show was firing on all cylinders. They really left no stone unturned on this show. I think every aspect of it was really, really great. And the Saito stuff, you know, I understand some people have very low patience when it comes to the amount of run-ins and weapon spots that happen in some of these big Dragongate main events. But again, I always filter it through the lens of they want to maintain some order, but they also want to make sure that the fans have a good time. And they really straddled that line in a way that I thought was super compelling. And I thought it had more depth than your usual Dragongate ref bump, heel run-in, babyface save type spot, which we've seen a million times over the years.
Right. And you had this all throughout a match where ISHIN, we've seen over the last few years, has really found himself basically as a fighting bowling ball and taking it to the next level in a Dreamgate scenario. This is exactly like after the Kakuta match, the kind of matches that YAMATO, we would want to have him have in this kind of title run, especially in one that's being positioned this kind of way. And boy, did ISHIN like step up. Like the Fire Thunder driver off the apron through a table. One of the more wild things, YAMATO Korakuen title defenses involve him like destroying his body. Like we have this, we have the Hulk match, we have other ones. He is someone that when he's in that building defending the title, he's willing to like go through it to put on that match. And I think that it really helped ISHIN. Like I think that the other side of it is like, does that make your challenger look weak? This is ISHIN's first title defense, and everyone who is a longtime kind of fan knows how these things goes. It's just the fact that the 60 minutes leading up to it actually gave you the 1% thought of, man, they might just completely have this unit run roughshod over the company and just do a reset and say, it's Z-Brat's world. Sorry, YAMATO, deal with this, get the belt back if you want to, kind of thing. And I think that added a lot to the match.
I don't think they could have made ISHIN look stronger. You know, he decimated YAMATO throughout this match. This was his biggest profile match to date. And the fact is, and again, the 60 minutes that preceded it helped, but the fact that at any point during the match, I thought, wow, there's a chance ISHIN wins this is incredible, because I went in not knowing what we were going to get, not knowing what style of match we were going to get, and hoping that they would be able to get me to that point. And my God, did they? I mean, this was a home run performance from ISHIN. And I think the thing that is really important to note with him, because I thought it was interesting, I saw in the Discord and the Dragongate channel, some people were comparing him to this generation's Cyber Kong. And with all due respect to Takashi Yoshida, I think ISHIN is already a level ahead of that, because yes, he's the shape that he is, and he has this aggression that he displays, and he does it very well. But ISHIN, kind of under the radar, has become a marvelous pro wrestler. And it's important to note that, yes, he was great in all of the brawling stuff, and the table spot rocked, and the chair spots were great. But when it came time to do intricate Dragongate wrestling, he was step for step with YAMATO. And it leaves me with no concern and no reservation that when it's time, a year or two from now, or 5 years from now, to have Open the Dragongate champions of Ryota Mochizuki, Strong Machine J, and Ishin Ihashi with those names exactly, Ishin Ihashi is going to be able to do the fast-paced Dragongate match. He's one step away from being able to do the epic Twin Gate match. He's at that point now. He wasn't there last year. When he had the Brave Gate belt, he was not this good of a wrestler, but he not only did the Ishin things that have made him stand out, the bowling ball stuff, the brawling, just the great power junior that he is now a great between the ropes wrestler, and that is really, really important to note. It's part of what made this match so special.
Yeah, and now we're at a point now with Ishin. He comes through this exam with A+ effort. Like now, with this title defense, we now have a new credible Dreamgate challenger, which that was kind of the one thing that I had in the back of my head. It's like, is this going to be the thing? Because I was always the thing, like, if we really want to do the one-to-one with him and Yoshida, yes, he got maligned for some Dreamgate matches that were kind of unfairly, but the reputation stuck and he never was able to shake it. And some of that is because of his own wrestling afterwards, right? Like, I mean, we could say, yeah, the most toxic person in company history was in a part of most of those matches. And if he had his mind set up on a match, he can make you look like shit. But after that guy left, Yoshida had title matches that weren't great either. Ishin, however, at 26, has now been like, all right, I'm someone you can go back to. I'm someone that I would not necessarily put the future Dreamgate champion label on him. But now we have the opportunity to say, like, hey, yeah, didn't think that before this match. Now, get a couple more years down, and it feels like he is someone that, at least if they were ever really focusing in the Tokyo area, and that would be a complete abandonment of 25 years of company strategy, he's the guy to go with if you were going to do that now. And we couldn't say that last week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've even come close to his ceiling at this point. And I had some concerns that this match was going to be flat and that he could lay an egg. And, I'm not sure. It could have
been Grapple YAMATO just grinding him. Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's a version of this match that is 25 minutes of, pro wrestling. And it's not that great. And I think they nailed exactly what the match should have been, which is this hybrid of, again, utter chaos, which fit the theme of the show, but then Ishin was able to go between the ropes when he needed to, and it elevated him in my eyes. I mean, I don't know where you're at, but, I think Ishin could be a really credible number 2 on a Twin Gate team right now.
Absolutely.
I think if he was going to win the Dragongate belts, he's so much better and in such a better spot on the roster than he was the last time that he had those titles. I'm not going to say they made a guy here, because he still has quite a ways to go, but man, did he take a Herculean leap forward. There was Ishin on September 4th, and there was Ishin September 5th and beyond, and those are two totally different wrestlers. And it's one of my big takeaways from this show is, we lost Sato, and we lost Kento, and we lost Fujiwara, and we've had some old guys retire and some old guys leave, and then we lost Nagano, and then we lost Tien Revolution. And, Dragongate does this, and you and I have been covering this long enough to know this, that there are times where the roster feels incredibly deep, and then people snap their fingers, and all of a sudden the roster's pretty thin. And I think we were dealing with a pretty thin roster especially when it came to guys that actually mattered over the last 2 or 3 years. There's always been depth and talent, but we're starting to see they've restocked the pond with young guys. I mean, it's absurd, but we're starting to see a really deep roster again, and a really deep roster of guys that matter and can have big matches. And I think Korakuen main events over the next 6 months or so are going to be really interesting, because I think we're going to get used to ISHIN being in those spots, and Rita being in those spots, and Junior being in those spots, and we'll see what happens with Vibes and D-Courage and Big Hug. And the promotion suddenly, again, is very, very deep, and it hadn't been that way if you go back just a little bit ago.
Case breaking news, not to go back to Sportsgate, but a press conference just happened with one Bruce Bochy, and he's announced the pitching lineups for this weekend. So we already talked about Kumar Rocker on Thursday. On Friday, the season debut of Jacob deGrom. On Saturday, Max Scherzer. We're finally getting the rotation we were promised.
Well, obviously, it's not like you guys needed it or anything.
It's not
10
like
games below 500.
It's not like somehow we've been in third all season because you're in a division with Oakland and Los Angeles. No,
well said.
But to get back to your point, like what we see here, and it's not to the degree of a Takahiro Yamamura. It's not to a degree of Akira Tozawa coming back in 2011 and suddenly mattering to such an extent that it was just such a sheer jump. What we have here, and I think that this is a great spot for him. This might sound like a backhanded compliment. It's not whatsoever. He was a third on a Dragongate team before this. Now he's number 2, I would say. Like if there was a Homare, ISHIN, Jason Lee Dragongate team, you'd be like, okay, that makes sense. And you look at ISHIN, and he's not the one that you're going like, all right, that's the guy who's kind of getting pulled along here. He has made that huge step up to being a guy. He was already a guy in Tokyo with his dad and mom and how they presented him over the last 3 years. But now we see for the promotion, he is now truly a guy.
I would still, if you're going to power rank Zebrats here, I would have Shun, I would have Minoura, I would have Jason, and then I would have Kai and ISHIN kind of on their own tier. And, I think we both sort of hope that we're within the last month of Kai being a heel and being involved in Zebrats. But if for some reason we're not, and Kai sticks around in that unit, can we please fire back up that ISHIN and Kai tag team? Because I think that would be the perfect landing ramp in 2024 for ISHIN this year. I really like the work those two did together.
Oh, yeah. Like if you're looking for a team to take the belts off, not hug, there you go. Do that at Fukuoka at the end of the year.
There you go.
But that was the main event. I was 4.25 stars. And I feel like some of that, as I've mentioned before, influenced by the events leading up to it. But as we've basically said for the last 10, 15 minutes, this has been an exceptional Yamato title run so far. This has been what we've been wanting from this guy for basically the last 8 or 9 years. And in doing so, he had that match for Kakuta, but now he really put on the elevation boots. And this is the purpose I wanted to see out of this title run. And it's already paying off. He could lose the belt it won't be at Origin, but he could lose the belt at Gate of Destiny at this point, and we can still point back to, hey, he made ISHIN that night. And I feel like that makes this title run a success. And the fact that we didn't talk business up top, 1492, the orange seats were basically filled. Yamato pointed out afterwards, let's get some people on the floor. Let's get some more seats out here. So, I mean, business-wise, this was their strongest Korakuen Hall performance, at least by my math, since Kness retired.
Yeah, I saw a comment on Twitter, and I don't fully know what this means, but I saw a comment that the north side of the building had to be divided into 2 sections, and that hadn't happened post-COVID, other than that Kness show, which was, a true tried and true sellout. So I don't know what that means, but I know it's the first time Dragongate's done that since 2020, and that's very good. And I guess it goes hand in hand with Yamato, because I do want to say something about Yamato before we move on, which is that it's way too early to take the victory lap, but let me just say the keys are in the engine on this victory lap of this being the career-defining run for Yamato. As Jay pointed out, 3 Dreamgate matches in 6 weeks. They've all been entirely different, because he not only, like you said, he made ISHIN, he also kind of threw Kakuta a life preserver and just reminded us that Kakuta belongs in the upper mid-card main event conversation, that no, he's got the talent, he can be up here, because had that Kakuta match bombed, I think we would have all had to recalibrate our expectations. But I don't know. I look around Japan, and All Japan is having a very good year, and All Japan has done a lot of things right, and they've done a lot of things right in the same way that Dragongate has. These are promotions that have put their head down. They have a vision. They are doing that vision. They are going forward, and they are seeing month by month little payoff after little payoff, and it is really starting to work out for them. And you look at the absolute mess that is Noah. It's amazing. It's amazing the reputation Noah had at the start of the N1 compared to the end of it, where like early August, I was like, yeah, Noah's been fun this year. Like I'm into Noah, and now it's just like, get that promotion the fuck away from me. I just can't stand anything they're doing. I don't want any part of it. I personally, and I wrote this in my review of this show, I am fully on the thought process right now that New Japan has Randy Orton an entire generation of wrestler, your Sujis and your Uemuras and all these guys. They have told you they are stars with no actual proof that they are stars. And now we're just in this weird, like, the New Japan discourse to me is so weird, because it's all about who's going to be the star. And then they all have these 3.5-star main events that just aren't any good. And it's like, well, none of these guys are, because I don't think any of them, Suji notwithstanding, are good enough to be that guy. And they've just done the Randy Orton thing where they've declared all of these guys stars with no evidence to back it up, and nothing in the future that makes me think they're going to be able to actually be stars. You know, I still think the 5-year plan of New Japan is a pretty rough one. I'm not bullish on their future in All Japan, despite the fact that I might be a tad lower on it than other people are. And obviously Dragongate, where we sit here and people know my stance on it, they have done such a great job this year, 2024 specifically, of having a vision and executing it. And this show was the payoff of all of that. I said this in my email to Dave this week to, try to nudge him along and have him fire up that Dragongate network, which he does have an account for. Of, this is the first time since 2020 that I felt Dragongate is the best promotion in the world. It was not that way in 2021. It was AEW. 2022 was, anybody else but Dragongate. Last year it was CMLL's year. I think CMLL has been very good. The good stuff in AEW has been very good. All Japan's had a strong year. This is Dragongate's year, man. And a lot of that has been, they haven't had that post-Kobe World lull that they typically fall into. Now, part of that is just simply scheduling, and the fact that, World happened and the August Korakuen happened, and it was all very quick and it was all very good. But man, YAMATO is like a promoter's wet dream of a champion right now. He just feels like he is, for a lack of a better term, not to try to sound hip here, but YAMATO is in his bag right now. He walks out to the ring, and I believe that man is a world champion. And I did not get that in 2017. I think I denied the possibility of it in my own brain in 2021. But right now, man, I am in love with the work YAMATO is doing.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I wanted to bring up before we moved on. Is there a way that you can, and let's try to put our stances aside here, is there a way that we can make an argument that YAMATO is a outside Flair Thez nominee?
Okay, let's see.
Or at least, if we forecast out, let's say YAMATO keeps up this, he holds the belt through the end of this year, does he then become a Flair Thez nominee? That's a better question.
Okay, so who's in the conversation? It's Danielson, Ospreay, Mystico, Yuma Anzai.
Yeah, I would have to put Yuma in there. I mean, nominally Naito, but
I wouldn't consider Naito for a second.
You heard my exhale there. Like that. I'm not like that. I don't think New Japan really has a candidate. I think it's the brand there right now. Kiyomiya?
No. I mean, Noah's not drawing shit. He can't be considered for Flair Thez. I'd consider him more for most outstanding.
That's fair.
He'll be in my top 10 for SFM 50 this year. But no, I mean, I no one from Noah could be considered. Would Zack Sabre Jr. be somebody you'd consider?
I think I want to see that copper box number, and I want to see how King of Pro Wrestling does before.
Okay, that is entire. I think Zack and YAMATO are in the same spot right now, where it's just it's a little bit like when there's a 35-year-old in the Hall of Fame ballot. It's like, just give me a minute. Let me see where this goes. And we're in September, and for both Zack and YAMATO, it's like, let me see. Let me see what happens here. Because by the way, I watched Zack versus Hechicero from Rev Pro. I liked it more than the Arena Coliseo match. I'm just throwing that out there.
I have that on my list. It's
yes,
on my plus.
I know you do, because I asked you for it. And let me just say, make some time for it, because I thought the CMLL match was 4.5. I went 4 3/4 on the Rev Pro match.
Nice. But it's something where I think the fact that we're willing to say this 2 months into Yamato's run, really on top, and I mean, he's going to other promotions and doing that too. I'm not saying that he's up there with a Danielson, Ospreay, Anzai at this point, but I feel like that this is kind of a year where it deserves consideration, basically. Maybe Micah deserves a little bit of that too, to be fair. But yeah, it's an interesting year, I feel like, for the Fez Flair, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that before we moved on back down the card.
Despite the unshakable Iowa Corn Cyhawk rivalry, there is one thing Iowa State and University of Iowa fans can both agree on: getting hyped for Unleaded 88. It's cleaner burning and better for your engine, and it's cheaper than other fuel options, making Unleaded 88 the clear fuel choice. If Iowa Corn Cyhawk rivals can agree on it, you know it's worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88, grown by Iowa corn farmers.
No, I think that's a really interesting point, because it's kind of the thing that's been missing from Dragongate this year, because Monte was the champion in the first half of the year, but nobody would consider Monte for that. And Shun is always the conductor of this entire machine, but you can't really point to anything specific that Shun has done that would, point him in that direction. I was Team Mystico up until this past weekend. I think it's Danielson's award right now. Although Mystico drawing for MLW, I still think is the most impressive thing anybody's done this year. But I would go Danielson, Mystico, and then I'd have to sit down and think about third. I mean, I would probably have Ospreay. I don't know if I could have Swerve. I think he's like the definition of an honorable mention this year. But I am interested in exploring as the year goes along both Yamato and Zach and where they would fall into this award.
I dig that. That's all I was wondering, is just give it a little bit of thought there. The semi-main event of the September 5th Korakuen was Gold Class versus Z-Brats, Benkei, BB Hulk, Rita, and Mochizuki Jr. versus Shun Skywalker, Kota Minoura, Kai, and Jason Lee. This match never really got going. It's had a flying start from Rita, just immediately dive bombing Mino and going after him, and leading to a crowd brawl and a lot of heat on Mino. But it all broke up because we heard a klaxon go off and Korakuen Hall, the Z-Brats theme hit. And lo and behold, making his return to Dragongate, Johnny Valletta from the orange seats, completely just disrupting and destroying the match. They had to throw the match out. No contest. And in the post-match, that's where we set up the loser expulsion match coming up in October.
I am going to try to find out, because I'm dying to know whose idea it was for the siren to blast during Valletta's entrance. That is one of the most genius things Dragongate has ever come up with. And I think, and I said this in May when he left the first time, I think the booking of Valletta is one of the great Dragongate booking victories of all time, because you hated him when he came in January. I was a little bit more like, well, let me wait and see where this goes, because even in January, when no one cared and he got no reaction in Korakuen, I looked at it as they did everything right. I wouldn't change a thing about this. I'm just not sure if it'll work. And then he started doing multi-man matches, and I said, no, this is awesome, actually. This is going to work. And sure enough, it has worked out. We talked after Champion Gate this year. I had somebody who goes to shows in the Osaka area send me a great note about just how terrified the crowd is of him during his entrance. And his note to me was just like, yeah, man, this is working. Like, this is an experience when you see it in the building. People at Dragongate shows don't normally react like this, and here they are going nuts. And then to have this in the middle of a match, I mean, Rita is there. He's about to hit his finish on Minoura. And to hear this siren in Korakuen, and then this hard pan to the orange seats, and out comes Valletta. Oh my God, this was phenomenal. I mean, this was full-blown like Dragongate meets ECW in the best way possible. it's funny this happened on this show because I had just started thinking about Valletta and I was losing hope that he would ever come back. And I thought maybe Rita and Valletta was just one of those things that we'd always want, but we would never get. And oh my God, did he come back? And I thought this thing from the siren to the fact in the post-match confrontation, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but they kept Kato and Valletta away from each other. Because when, I guess I should call him Homare, when Homare was a young boy, Valletta would kick the shit out of him. Now they're in the same unit, and they didn't want anything to do with each other. Everything about this was flawless. I am so into this.
Yeah, and I think that after we saw what happened with Valletta in a Dreamgate match, keeping him in this context is the way to go with
This
him.
is all I need to do with him. They played the game. What if Gianni Valletta was going to open the Dreamgate match? We don't need to see it ever again. We know what it looks like. We know it's not the best use of him. This is the best use of him. Him in multi-man matches is the best use of him. I really, really hope. I don't know if there's a desired Z-Brats team that I would have. I mean, I guess it would be Shun, Kota, Jason, and Valletta is what I'm really hoping for next month.
Well, we need Kai in that to get Kai out.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do there.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. It adds a lot of depth. Like not to go on another Z-Brats tangent now, I feel like you get an opportunity to do a whole lot more, adding him back into the fold. They did set up the Valletta versus Rita match. It's happening at Gate of Origin. We'll talk more about Gate of Origin as we close out the program this week. But for a no contest, I don't think you can make a no contest be as compelling and check off as all the boxes that it did. Like this, really, if you want to look at it in a certain way, you pretty much had an extended angle going into intermission and then into the main event. And with that, you see Z-Brats just instantly become ultra powerful. It's fantastic.
I mean, Junior is magnificent in these sorts of matches. It's in the same way that I think ISHIN is underrated as a wrestler at this point. Like Junior's now been in a few of these wild brawls, and it's like, no, he's crazy. You know, he shows a bunch of fire in those. He was awesome. Rita, and I guess we can stop here for a second and talk about Rita. And if you want to mention the New Japan show that he was on, this guy can do no wrong. And, you know, I still think we're all, myself included, I think we're all underrating just how talented he is because it's still like, oh, it's, you know, he's a mini, it's the little guy. Rita is fucking phenomenal. And I haven't seen the New Japan show yet, but I heard he killed it there.
Yeah, so I saw this, just a note on it, the Shingo Takagi 20th anniversary homecoming show in Yamanashi. They had, of course, YAMATO in the main event, but really the performance that I kind of came away from actually being really impressed by was the opener was young boy Shoma Kato teaming with Rita versus United Empire, Callum Newman and Francisco Akira. And it is a credit to Rita that given everything in the match, he came out the most over guy. And it was a lot of him, you know, doing a little bit of his shtick, you know, running around, especially getting Akira in on that. But I think like in front of his hometown, which they made clear over the PA in his announcement that he was from Yamanashi, it came away as like the kind of performance that when Dragongate sends people into New Japan or on these bigger stages, this is what you wanted to see, less so than how the Daya Best of the Super Juniors, which I was higher on than I think others, but this was what you wanted to see from Rita. The main event, it was exactly what I was calling. They ran back the LIJ versus LIJ Adachi main event where it was the hometown of Naito and Bushi. They did it for Shingo. The Yamato stuff was, you know, Yamato like mixing it up with all of them, and I mean that's fun. You did have Hiromu like make a beeline to him after what all happened in 2023, but it was, I mean, the visiting star appear was my big kind of takeaway from that match.
Let me ask you this as we go back to, again, next month at Korakuen at Z-Brats and Gold Class, losing member of the match has to leave their unit. It feels too obvious for BB Hulk to be the answer if Gold Class were to lose, right?
I feel like that's where the eye goes to, but I feel like the other three leaving is a lot more interesting than BB Hulk leaving because it's BB Hulk in 2024. Yeah,
I mean, you know, you'd have to mark Junior safe unless they're going to do something really weird. It's tough, and it's especially tough because we don't know the Z-Brats lineup right now. We obviously just know the 4 members of Gold Class, but that's kind of one of those. I saw that discussion in the immediate fallout of the show, and you're right. Hulk would be the logical guy to lose, and I would argue that Hulk should be the one to take the fall. But that also doesn't feel like Dragongate. It feels like they would do something way more convoluted than that.
Yeah, like it would be Rita losing and then being forced into Z-Brats and having to be the mascot, but now a heel mascot, and then he finally breaks out. Like, that's what you would do Dragongate-wise.
Yes, exactly.
But, yeah, the Yamanashi showcase, cool to see Shingo in his hometown. Like, that was neat, but I don't necessarily think from a Dragongate perspective you necessarily need to go out of your way for it.
Okay, good to know.
But, yeah, getting back to the semi-main, I don't know what he calls it, but you touched on Junior. It's not a pure Fosbury flop moonsault, but that tope that he does every single time, he lands it on his feet now. Like, for a while, he was not landing it clean. Now that is become like one of the more impressive dives in wrestling, just because he runs full force, then pulls the Fosbury flop out at the last second, and then just completely rotates through and lands on his feet. I thought that was remarkable in the semi-main.
He's a full-blown freak. This isn't the superlative show for Junior. I have another young guy on the roster that I'll save that for, but he's a full-blown freak. A really special wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about young guys with superlatives, before intermission, the Homare Kato debut match against Masaki Mochizuki. Of course, in the post-match, as we were talking, Mochizuki wins. He has to go with the twister to beat him. Kato gets out of the crab. Then Gold Class and Big Hug immediately hit the ring. Everyone kind of was just astonished by Kato's performance, wanting to get in on the ground floor on a promising career. Ben and Hyo offered him admission. However, Homare, as he's now known, said he had other ideas, and the wrestler that he admired and that the wrestler he wants to train under is Shun Skywalker. He joined Z-Brats. Jay freaks out on commentary, and Kato and Homare, I should start calling him Homare now. Homare, as like he does the pose, you see like I don't know if this was like intentional or not. You kind of get to see like him going kind of heel stone faced as it happens. But let's talk about the debut. I thought it was exceptional.
I will note real quick, because I think this is worth saying, I thought this was one of the 5 best calls Jay has ever had for a Dragongate match. This was Jay as a world-class commentator. He was unbelievably great, telling us every detail we need to know about the match as it was happening, and then his reaction afterwards, flawless. I mean, Jay was so good, and he's now been doing commentary 5 years, and I liked him originally in the Mike Tenay role when it was Lenny and Larry and Jay, and I loved that team, and I'm bummed we didn't get more of them. And then, when he took over with Larry, I thought he was very good. I thought Larry helped him out a lot. And then when it was Jay and Ho-Ho, it was at first it was a pairing that had a lot of charm, and very quickly Jay developed into this excellent pro wrestling announcer that he still is. But this to me was on the level of Yamato versus Ben or any of the other classic Dreamgate matches that he's now called. To me, this is his defining moment of the year. It is the thing that I will remember come award season. I will once again vote him as my best wrestling announcer this year. This was one of the best Jay calls I have ever heard. If you don't normally watch in English, go back and watch this in English, because I thought he was just absolutely marvelous in this match.
Yeah, and everyone really just like focusing in on Homare, Mochizuki, getting the Mochizuki debut versus like it would be Genki or something like that. And just the performance that kind of came out there, and the crowd, the pop that Korakuen had for the Momo latch, like surprised me. It took me aback. I was like, Korakuen remembers this hold? Like, how does this fan base remember the Momo latch? Like, it's not like Katoka used it that much. And it was just like, oh, wow, okay. And just all the way through, just seeing at least the ability of Homare and getting kind of told, like, this is the fundamentals of this kid. Now things are going to be different. I thought was a really cool experience, because usually, I mean, you look at how Dragongate treats their rookies, and they do treat them better, I would say, in comparative to the roster than other promotions, but you still have these phases. I mean, you look further down the card, Daiki Yanagiuchi still scrapping with Punch Tominaga here. You have, though, the idea that this guy is such a phenom that everyone is interested in. And it's clearly, like, not that I think he is a super rookie, but you have now everyone's attention going to this guy, and it's setting apart. And in a way, it kind of reminded me of how quickly they put Kakuta in RED. We're like, oh, yeah, no, Kakuta's in RED now. It's like, oh, okay, now we're going to that. We have that kind of impression after this match, but with the backing of, all right, we know his fundamentals are there, his ability, he's a former gymnast, we know he's got all of this. Now he gets to go do the heel run first, and I think that's just really intriguing.
What we witnessed here was one of the most memorable debuts in Dragongate history, and that covers quite a bit of ground. In my written review over at voicesofwrestling.com, I wrote, I've now covered, and I didn't realize the number was this big, I've covered 29 debuts since I started covering Dragongate in 2015. So everybody from Takahiro Yamamura onwards, you know, I've seen, if not their first match, if it wasn't at Korakuen Hall, you know, I've written about their very early work. And at least in that time period, I think the three debuts that stick out of my mind are Katsumi Takashima, Strong Machine J, and Tien Revolution. Takashima, of course, is this name that is completely lost due to history. A lot of people might be hardcore Dragongate fans and might not know the name Katsumi Takashima. He is best known for debuting in Korakuen Hall, December 1st, 2016. He is the lost member of the class of 2016. So it's Ben, Hyo, Shun, Yoshioka, who had already debuted at this point. And then it was this guy, Takashima, and they had this 10-man tag in Korakuen. It was Takashima's debut, and they wrestled Shima, Don Fuji, Dragon Kid Gam, and Masaki Mochizuki. It's one of the most violent matches of all time. The legends utterly obliterate the rookie class. Takashima was known for having bad eyes. He retired partially due to an eye injury, and you see Shima quite literally attack this man's eyes in that match. The whole entire thing is shocking. And the Homare debut reminded me a little bit of that because of the placement on the card and the fact that it was a really big deal. The Strong Machine J debut in 2019, and this is weird to think, it's still, to me, the single best debut match of anybody in Dragongate history from a match quality standpoint. Now, part of that was, you know, he was teaming with the Strong Machines, who were very strong wrestlers in their own right, and then they were wrestling Genki and KZ and Susumu, and they weren't going to let Strong Machine J fail. You know, Strong Machine J in April of 2019 looked like he was on the fast track to being one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world. Strong Machine J in July of 2019 looked utterly lost and like he might not live up to the standard of what a Dragongate wrestler typically is. Luckily, he figured it all out. But that debut match was so unbelievable. I went 4 stars on it. I think it is, to this day, the only debut that I have gone full notebook on. And we all thought we were witnessing something utterly incredible from a wrestling standpoint, more so than a star power standpoint, with Strong Machine J. And then you have Tien Revolution. It was a year ago. You know, it was September of 2023. He came into Korakuen. He beat Dragon Dia. He basically told everybody that he was better than them, that he expected more from the competition. He shrugged his shoulders, left, and then a month later he was retired, and we've never seen anything like it. And Homare has become the spiritual successor to all of those guys. It's so interesting to see them sort of combine all of these things, where you have the violence that was in the Takashima match that you would have in a normal veteran versus young boy match, and then you have the hype with Homare that you have with Strong Machine J. You know, for those that weren't following at the time, the Strong Machine J debut was a massive deal. They held a press conference. They didn't tell anybody what the press conference was.
No, they didn't.
This was the beginning of 2019. And I mean, I remember talking to you the night that the press conference was announced, and we were like, what, is Dragon Kid leaving? You know, is Doi gone? You know, we assumed it was the worst. And then it was like, oh, Strong Machine has a son who wants to go to Dragongate? Okay, all right, sure. And then he debuted and was phenomenal. And then you have the TN debut. And I really started thinking about this era of Dragongate, 2018 onwards. And it's so interesting because you can kind of point to this. I'm glad you mentioned Kakuta, because I hadn't really thought about him for this role, but you're right. You have Kento in Fujiwara, and you have Kakuta, and you have Tien. And all of those guys, they have tried to do something big and impactful with pretty much immediately upon debut. I think with Kento, they realized what they had very early, and they were always planning that way. For Fujiwara, they did not know what they had, and they quickly reverted course and sent him to Mexico, worst thing they could have done, and we never got to see the payoff of that. Same with Kento. Kakuta, you're right, they turned him heel incredibly quickly, and then he got hurt. So we never really got to see what that role was going to be. And then TNR is his own separate thing. He exists in his own separate world. It's the most tragic story you can come up with within the confines of Dragongate. And yet, they are now trying again with Homare. And it almost feels like it's this cursed role to be the leader of your rookie class, to be the one that the most eyeballs are on. But it also makes me incredibly excited because I get the impression just from following the booking patterns of this promotion over the last 5 years, I think they just keep on finding guys to try to tell the same story with. And I don't know what that story is going to be for Homare. I think it's all been a little bit different for each of the guys, but I think the through line is there. They want to do something badly with a young and inexperienced wrestler in Homare, while he might not have inherently the charisma that Kento did from day one, and he might not be the in-ring wrestler that Fujiwara was from day one, and he might not be the package just fully grown and grown up and developed and incredible that TNR was. He's got a little bit of all of that. And I am so intrigued to see where they go from here, because this to me was one of the most memorable angles that I have covered in my 9 years of reviewing this company.
Yeah, it is remarkable, and it is one of the many things that I think 9/5/24 will get remembered for, was the day that Homare debuted and how everything kind of changed around him very, very quickly. Working our way back down the card, we had Ultimo join with Big Hug, Luis Montehio, and Jackie Kamei versus Paradox, the Open the Twin Gate champions, Dragon Kid and Naruki Doi, along with the original Jimmies, Susumu Yokosuka and Kagatora. Kamei got the pin on Dragon Kid with a Jackie knife, but it's worth noting, afterwards, you would think, okay, that means that we're going to probably see Jack and Monte again, or maybe Jack and Hyo getting a shot against them. But he did not want the Twin Gate shot. Instead, he had a different belt on his mind. He made the challenge against Dragon Dia, who came out and kind of little brothered Jackie Kamei, saying, hey, I don't want any of this Jackie funky business. I want to see the Takedo Kamei that everyone has like such high stocks in. And we will see that as the semi-main event of Gate of Origin in Sendai coming up on Monday. Respect for the Age Day is going to have two of the young guys going head-to-head for the Brave Gate title.
Super fun. You know, I'm certainly into Kame and Dai on paper. I thought this match, while nothing special, you know, I said at the top, it sort of felt like this whole thing was one awesome episode of TV. And to me, this was perfectly acceptable TV wrestling.
Ultimo did not want to be in this match.
Fantastic. I love it. That's a good gimmick. I honestly, they should run that as a gimmick where he just never tags in.
I mean, there was a moment, and again, Jay had a all-time day. He's doing like, yeah, Ultimo has not tagged in. And then he managed to call like right before Ultimo finally got into the match. It was perfect. It was great. Match 3, we had a Natural Vibes versus D-Courage trios match. Strong Machine J, KZ, and UT versus Dragon Dia, Madoka Kakuta, and Ryoya Tanaka. Jay got the win with the machine suplex on Ryoya, but after the main event, this was easily number 2 on the night. The second of my notebook matches, I was 4 flat on this. Just an absolute belter of a trios match. And Ryoya Tanaka, he is just like, it's interesting because we see ISHIN get elevated this week. We see Homare came in and stake his claim. But like each time I see Ryoya Tanaka wrestle, I just kind of go like, yeah, this is the guy. No wonder they had such faith in him out of everyone from last year's class. No wonder he was the one that they were going with this. The more that this match went on, this is like the first rare D-Courage match where the person I'm like thinking about should be the Brave Gate champion is not Dragon Dia. I came away with this going like, Ryoya is there. Ryoya, I'm ready for this right now. It was just, I thought it was an incredible performance from him. From now in his second year, I mean, just barely getting going, and he was the backbone of this match for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's only 15 months into his career, and
sickening.
It is. You know, I always say he looks like he was made in the Dragongate factory, where it's just every single thing they would want out of a wrestler and him. And I'm really starting to lead that charge. You know, I started thinking in this match, the best thing that ever happened to Ryoya Tanaka, and you know, this is unfortunate, but the best thing that ever happened to him was Yuki Yoshioka getting hurt, because now he's just been working mainline D'Courage trios matches all year, and it hasn't been him and Daiki on the undercard, and he hasn't been forced to wrestle Punch Tamanaga a bunch, and it's not him and Don Fuji. He's just wrestled all of the best guys, and in particular, he's now developed this chemistry with KZ, where I don't think it's by accident they wrestled at Dangerous Gate, and I don't think it's by accident they keep on wrestling on TV, because I think the company has gone, well, wait a minute, there's a special connection here for two guys that have no backstory together, have no reason to be in a feud. They have chemistry that elevates one another in a way that just simply shouldn't happen. And yet it is, and that has become the charm with Tanaka. You know, I still think Mochizuki Jr. is slightly better at this point and has the higher ceiling. But to me, when you project 10 years in the future, it's Junior's company and it's Tanaka's company. And I really hope that by year's end, and I certainly tried to help this week by sending notes to, you know, some pundits out there with a bigger platform than myself, where it's like, we have to talk about Ryoya Tanaka. I thought he was the biggest omission in 30 Under 30 this year. I was shocked at how well Junior did, and I was shocked that Tanaka didn't receive as much support as I thought he was going to, because to me, it was just so obvious. You know, from match one, this was a guy that was immediately a very good pro wrestler. He's only gotten better since. And as we go into SFM 50 season, I feel very confident Tanaka's been one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world this year. And I wouldn't say that about Daya, and I wouldn't say that about Kakuta, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and this was a bit of a topic this afternoon in the Discord, Mochi Jr. versus Tanaka. The thing that I find really interesting about Tanaka, that I feel like we're years from in a weird way, I don't know how this guy turns heel. Like, I don't know what a heel Ryoya Tanaka is, because he just comes off as like I know it's an older wrestling term. He comes off as like the biggest blue eye possible. And I just can't see him turning. And at the same time, I'm like, eventually they're going to do that. And I'm just fascinated on what we might see from Tanaka. Whereas with Junior, you have something that, I mean, the blueprint's there. He has his own personality. He has done enough to kind of set himself away from his dad. But we get a sense of, like, if he is his father's son, he's going to be a hell of a heel. So, like, we already have a level of expectation there. I can't have one with Ryoya Tanaka. Like, have you ever thought about, like when you say, like, this 10-year forecast, like, there's going to be heel and face turns, a part of that. I don't know what that looks like for Ryoya Tanaka case, but I don't think that's a bad thing. That makes it'll be like an absolute, like, surprise what he is like as a heel, but it'll happen one day. I just don't know what he is as that. And I wonder if that's something that, I don't think it's going to hurt his trajectory at the very least, but it's something that it gives me a little bit of thought, going like, what is heel Ryoya Tanaka?
Well, he reminds me so much of young BB Hulk, and you know, Hulk at least had the advantage of, he had all those kicks, and so when he turned heel for the first time, it was like, okay, we can have this guy be a deadly striker, and that'll be the change from dancing BB Hulk to non-dancing but babyface BB Hulk to now heel, is he's going to throw even more kicks than ever. And Tanaka doesn't really have that thing offensively where you can immediately identify that as, well, if they just lean into this, then he can be a heel. But I think presentation-wise, you know, I think it's very likely within 5 years we're seeing some sort of goth Ryoya Tanaka. I think that's probably the pivot that there is there.
Yeah, like, you have to have, like, that sort of massive transformation. And with Hulk, you already had the understory of whenever he went dark side. So, like, there was an idea there. We just need to see what happens when Ryoya Tanaka gets real pissed off, basically.
And I guess, and this is such a lofty thing to say about somebody, but are we sure they're not just following the template that they gave YAMATO with Ryoya Tanaka? Doesn't it seem like there's at least a little bit of similarity there, and probably something that shouldn't be ignored? After all, he did debut against YAMATO. I think Yamato is not and has never been as natural of a babyface that Tanaka already is. But I also think Tanaka can figure out a heel version of himself in the same way that Yamato is such a natural heel, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, and if you watch any Ryukyu Dragon, you see a guy who looks suspiciously like the same body type as one Ryoya Tanaka already trying some heel stuff. So it's not going to be an abrupt thing. Whatever happens, and maybe it is that there's just like this instance to him, like how Yamato, where you just slapped into it. It's like, oh yeah, now he has the eye black. He's now the coolest guy on the planet. And maybe there is something like that just turns on, and Tanaka is just flawless from that point.
I do wonder, I guess not even wonder, I think it's interesting to note, he really hasn't been, despite the fact that he's been around all year, he hasn't been in a ton of high profile matches, which I think is a benefit to him. He only has one Triangle Gate match in his entire career, and it was at Champion Gate this year, and it's 4.5 stars, and it was fantastic. And I kind of came away from it going like, man, look at Tanaka. Like, this guy at that point was less than a year into his career, and he was already so good. So there's a level up that he can go, because I think he's one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world this year. And that's by doing what he did on this show, which is just, hey, go out there, have a great match, come back to the back, and go on to the next town. We haven't seen, he had the Brave Gate match with ISHIN last year, and I don't think either of them were particularly ready for that spot, looking back in hindsight. But you have an entirely new category of Tanaka match when he becomes a Brave Gate contender. We've never seen him in a Twin Gate match. We've only seen him in one Triangle Gate match. This guy has so much more room to grow, just in terms of card placement, let alone the years of experience that will compound at some point. But to be 15, 16 months into his career and to be this good is just absolutely insane. And I think it's time that people who follow the rest of the wrestling world as closely as they do finally take note of Ryoya Tanaka.
Absolutely. Working back, we had an kind of unaffiliated tag. You had Toru Owashi and Big Boss Shimizu versus Shuji Kondo and Yasushi Kanda. So you have the Aga and Isu pair on opposite sides, kind of doing a sumo and sumo thing. The thing is that the sumo thing didn't work out. Owashi misfires onto Big Boss Shimizu, allowing Kanda to get the win with the candy magic. Owashi immediately gets on the microphone and says, like, hey, might be getting a Triangle Gate team together to go up against you. And lo and behold, after the open the Triangle Gate defense in Yamagata against Ryo Saito and friends, we have coming up at Gate of Origin, it is Strong Machine J, Big Boss Shimizu, UT versus the challenger team, Toru Owashi, Masaki Mochizuki, and Don Fuji.
The Korakuen match was fine. I think the Gate of Origin match is a ton of fun.
Yep, absolutely. And then we opened with Punch Tominaga versus Daiki Yanagiuchi. Daiki got caught up in the moment, thinking he had the win, arguing the count with that, but then very quickly Punch Tominaga caught him with the punch clutch to get a win, and Daiki Yanagiuchi remains 0-87.
Is Yanagiuchi, I don't know if you know this, I tried to figure it out, I couldn't. Has he gone the longest without a win in Dragongate history?
I mean, my natural inclination is to say no because Stalker's around, but Stalker still got wins, but they were like Banana Peel stuff or like Dana Bauer. Feel like I need to look into it, but thinking about Dragon System history, this losing streak it's now well past a year and a half.
If anybody has an answer to that, please put it in the Discord. I'd like to know.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm struggling to think of anybody that lost quite as much as him. Now, look, they're doing something with him. Him chastising the referee was something. I wish at some point he would win a fucking match, but at least there's direction in him losing at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I'm lower on him than you, but like they're doing something with him. I'm intrigued of what they're doing. I'm just ready for whatever that is to happen at this point. Like Hamare's debuting. We got Sahara next month. Sahara, they're going to move pretty quick because he's a bigger guy. And you know how the company treats with this. Like, I want to see what's the next step for Daiki is because attention's getting pulled elsewhere in the rookies. And fighting with the ref definitely feels like a step, but I feel like he needs much more of that considering how the landscape is changing very quickly, if that makes sense.
That was Korakuen. It was the best show they've had this year. Best Korakuen show I've seen from any company this year. if for some reason you've listened to this entire thing and you didn't watch the show, you need to go watch the show. And the matches 5, 6, and 7, I thought were all just so purely chaotic in a way that completely worked, and it was great to see. I hope other people take note. I really hope that this is a show that, a week removed and a week and a half removed, that people finally start to buzz about, because it deserves it. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was on a weekend where the missus had her bachelorette party. I watched a lot of wrestling and college football. What was my favorite thing that I saw all weekend, including Pac have a 5-star match? Yeah, Pac had a 5-star match this week, Case. We didn't talk about that.
I will be saving my thoughts for a podcast in the somewhat near future where I have been asked to talk about that match. I will table all my Pac Ospreay thoughts for now.
All I say is that I developed my top 5 Pac singles matches. I have that one firmly as number 1. One that I feel like that people don't remember and should go out of their way to go see. Go see the Ricochet match from November 2011.
Damn it, I knew I was forgetting something when I was putting that list together, because I did my own. And yeah, Ricochet November 2011 is definitely worth a mention.
Yeah, my top 5, just as we're just wrapping up here, we'll talk about Gate of Origin in a sec. Ospreay, then KZ 2019. Shingo 2008 floored me. That one is my number 3. Ricochet in November 2011, and then the Shun Farewell to Hakata at 5. For those who are looking for more great Pac singles matches, they're out there. It's just people aren't looking for them yet. Those are 5 you should go out and see.
Mike, I've got the Gate of Origin card. Before we go, do you want me to run down this real quick?
Yep, we'll run down this real quick. This is on Monday. Respect for the Age Day. Casey, the floor is yours.
So I will not be here next week. Mike, are you doing a solo show, or are you bringing in a guest?
I'm doing a solo show. I am reaching the busy pre-wedding phase, so I'm going to knock that out. That should be in everyone's feed. I might do same day audio, frankly, for that.
Okay, great. I will not be here next week, so Mike will take control of that. Last year, I remember we had the discussion off air where I said I will write a Gate of Origin review if the show warrants a review. If you go to the Voices of Wrestling archives, there is not a review there because that show did not warrant one. Don't expect any written reviews from me on this show, no matter how good it is. If somebody loves the show and would love to write about it for Voices of Wrestling, knock yourself out. But it will not be me. But I will, 2 weeks from now, give my thoughts on this show. Opening match, Ben K and Mochizuki Jr. versus Luis Monte and Hyo. Match number 2, the Ryo Fuda Anniversary and Homecoming match, him versus Ishin. Match number 3, a 6-man tag with Ultimo Dragon, Yasushi Kanda, and Madoka Kakuta versus Dragon Kid, Susumu Yokosuka, and Kakatora. Match number 4 is Rita versus Gianni Valletta. Match number 5 is the special 10-man tag Mad, Blanky, and Sendai match, Yamato, BB Hulk, KZ, Problem Dragon, and Punch Tamanaga versus Shun Skywalker, Coach Minoru, Kai, Jason Lee, and Homare. And then match number 6, Triangle Gate match, like you just said, Strong Machine J, Shimizu, and UT versus Don Fuji, Masaki Mochizuki, and Toru Owashi. And your main event Brave Gate match, Dragon Daya versus Jackie Kame.
I really like this show. I mean,
I do too.
Other than the obvious touch football match, I feel like this is a bigger card, just vibes-wise, than last year.
Much stronger than last year.
Let's see if they don't do it in the loading dock of the Sunfesta. That really killed the vibe for last year, for me at least. Yeah, there's a lot about this to like, and we'll talk about that next week on a solo show.
Yes, I would imagine I put my thoughts in the Voices of Wrestling Discord at some point, but no coverage from me next week. Mike, this one's all you, and it looks like a good show, so hopefully it is.
Yeah, I mean, Fuda versus Ishin as match 2 rocks, and then yeah, we're finally getting Rita versus Johnny Valletta. I feel like I can do an hour and a half just on that match, just knowing that's out there.
I almost feel like that's the biggest draw of this show. I'm kind of surprised they're not doing it in Korakuen. I mean, really, Diane Kame's a big match. The Triangle Gate match is fun, but Valletta and Rita technically has like 4 months of build.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It feels like that there could be a lot more of this, just for my own edification, just making sure. Just because of how the main events are set up there. No, Kamei is not from that area. I feel like that the Hoku strategy is kind of in the mud, Yeah,
Takuma Fujiwara sort of ruined that.
Yep, no, that's true. But that is Gate of Origin, and that was Open the Voice Gate this week. Case, do you have anything else you want to touch on before we're out?
I do not.
All right, you can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you want to chat with our community, the best way to kind of do that is on the Voices of Wrestling Discord. There's an Open the Voice Gate channel where we always post the show, talk about what's happened on the podcast whenever we do a rewind and rewatch. More often than not, the links are there. And then also the Dragongate channel on the Voices of Wrestling Discord. I think that we've kind of like, if you're someone who's getting new into Dragongate, it's one of the best resources you could have. There's a lot of people there, Case and myself included, but a lot of others who are deep with Dragon System that are always up for talking. But you can follow us on Twitter again at Open Voice Gate. Case is at underscore in your case. I'm at Fujiheya. Thanks for listening to Open Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next week. Take care.
Hey now, it's Mike Gilbert, host of the Mike and JD Show, right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Join JD by God Oliva and myself every Thursday night live on the Voices of Wrestling YouTube channel at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we stay up all night discussing all the hottest stories in professional wrestling. You can also check us out right here on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting feed, or you can subscribe to the Mike and JD Show feed. Now, enjoy the show.
O'Reilly.
You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly.